All right, recording and streaming. Woo, we're winning. I don't know if can you see me on my screen? Mine, it's weird. It's such as okay, good. All right, getting up, people. It's Friday Night Feels. Who knows where this is gonna go? So, welcome to Friday Night Feels. I'm licensed mental health counselor and certified life coach Patrick Monette. And this is a show that focuses on a variety of wellness related issues such as mental health, men's health, addiction, health concerns, relationships, mindfulness, healing, and much more. The focus of the show is to create connection and to be able to talk about issues that affect all of us and how to be the healthiest versions of ourselves that we can be. Each show, I invite a guest to come and join with me and share their experiences with healing and wellness. My guest tonight is Elaine Santos, a certified wellness coach and founder of Wellness as Art. She offers one on one health and wellness coaching, workshops, and guided imagery, and is very passionate about helping others reach their wellness goals and live healthier, more vibrant lives. She also has a master's in integrative health studies and is also a mental health coach. Her education and experience gives her a holistic view of her clients, and her coaching philosophy is centered around curiosity, kindness, and joy. So, welcome to Friday Night Feels, Elaine!
Thank you so much. This is fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, you're in California, and I'm
Mhm.
in New York, so we're representing both good sides of the country.
Right?
Like, only magic can happen. Only magic can happen.
Yes.
So we were just chatting before we went live, and I just said I'm probably just going to be just asking a whole bunch of random questions because your bio is so interesting and there's so many things. So I hope you have your coffee. It's 5 o'clock where you are,
I
so I'm
got
ready.
my jar of water.
Oh, sure. I know. I have my cup of water. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Like people who drink caffeine at night, I'm like, I don't really understand that.
I
So
can drink caffeine during the day. I'm up for period. Like I'm a lightweight across the
okay, so
board on
this one time
everything.
I'll tell you the story. I don't drink coffee, so I thought it was a good idea to buy chocolate covered espresso beans because it's dark chocolate, so it's basically a vegetable.
That's
And then at like 3 in the morning, I'm wide awake and I didn't know why. I'm like, wait a minute.
You're like, why am I cleaning my bathroom right
Again, the stars are awake, so I'm awake. It's one of those things. So I'm so excited to connect with you. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because it sounds like you offer a lot of really interesting things in your work.
Yeah. So I'm like, where do I start? Uh so I guess I center as a health and wellness coach. So certified through the national board and
Okay.
HWC, like the acronyms. And that is like where I start. And then so I do individual coaching, which is really fun. But I really love doing my group programs too. I have a winter group every year. I'll be on my third year. And
Ooh,
I really do like to focus on stress and like trying to think about it. I wrote notes, but not really good ones. But like this idea of self-care, but then also stress management. So, but I don't like management because management to me feels like you're trying to like get
controlling.
it to do something. And
Hmm.
so I like to say stress awareness and flow. So like getting very aware of like what stress is, how it impacts us, mind, body, and spirit. And then what is our mindset around stress? And then how do we flow with it? Like what are our tools and skills and resources to work with those things versus trying to like kind of I need to control this stress.
Right.
It's like, it's going to show up. It's like, how do
Well,
you let it roll through,
right. And it's interesting because I can imagine even as I'm thinking of myself of, well, yeah, there's stress. So what can I possibly learn about stress? Like that would be my first like, so do people ask you that? Like what can you teach me about stress that I wouldn't know already?
Yeah, there's, well, and I think some of it is like well known, but then we don't do it. Like, you know how we like know things, but then, so that's the beauty of coaching. It's like teaching us how to like change behaviors around it. But I do like to think about stress in the body a lot. So I like going over some of the just basic workings of like fight or flight, the stress response, how that shifts our bodies. So like our breathing changes, how and then how simple we can just change our breathing to calm our bodies down and our stress
Okay.
down. And then our mind calms down. And then the thing about stress is people have been told for so long that stress is bad for you. And it's not necessarily bad for you. It's
Okay.
like chronic stress is bad for you, but stress, like fight, flight, like that's just a natural human response to things.
Right.
So like also changing our mindset around it. Because when we panic about things, it kind of makes sense everything worse, like,
Okay.
oh, I'm so stressed out. Oh, this is terrible. And like we keep spiraling versus
Right.
like, that's a big
And I
thing.
think what you said made a lot of sense. I am just thinking of all the products that I see is stress away, free your stress, eliminate the stress, get rid of it,
Mhm.
like be stress free, which for me stresses me out even more because it's giving me the message I'm doing something wrong because I
Yes.
am stressed. It's like, why are you judging me with your products?
Yes.
And so, when you are working with someone, how do you define stress? Or is it different for everyone you work
I think of stress as an energy. It's the energy to get stuff done,
with? Okay.
usually. So, and I think it also gets called anxiety a lot. So it's like
Okay.
that emotion of anxiety. And anxiety is like getting things done energy. And then when we have too much of it, because there's only so many things that can actually get done in the present moment, but because our mind is like spazzing out, or not spazzing out, but like it's like digging into future scenarios that aren't even real, and like, what about this? We have all this extra stress or anxiety, right, to
Right.
try to push out to solve all these things that aren't solvable because they're not real. So it's like once we get back to like the present of like what is going on right now, so like kind of like channeling that energy. So people sometimes feel anxious about things, but excitement is also the same. It's kind of on the other side.
Like
You
the
can either
spectrum.
be, yeah, and you can't be excited about everything that's stressful in your life. So that's like just for
Right.
some things, like performing, like doing interviews. You could feel, you know what I mean? Like a job interview, you feel anxious, but you could also tell yourself, I'm excited. And you can actually shift your stress chemicals to
Okay.
be in your support, right? So it's just kind of trying to figure out those things. So I do think stress is like energy. I don't necessarily think it's bad. There's
Okay.
things that can feel, distressful, and then there's good stress, right? Like a move can be a great thing, but it's still stressful to move or
Mhm.
travel.
And it's interesting because sometimes it can be that motivation of it's like I'm working on a project or I'm working on a goal or I think of when people are traveling.
Mhm.
Like it's so many different emotions and the stress of airports, this and all of that, and it interweaves into the experience.
Yeah.
And what I see, and maybe you can share with me your experience, is people struggle to even identify that they are stressed.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think it's a little resistance, but sometimes I think it's that they actually don't know what the like is the anxiety and stress. They just know they're not feeling good. Do you ever see that?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're totally right. And I think about have you ever gotten like a massage and you're like, I'm okay. And then they're like, man, you're tense. And you're like, oh, you're like, guess I was tense. I feel like we carry around a lot of tension in
Yeah.
our bodies. And you're right, when we're used to, well, I come from like a corporate background too. I worked as an administrative assistant and office manager for many years in
Okay.
corporate engineering. So
Oh
I
wow.
believe this very corporate lifestyle. So I just think about like you just are used to a certain level of stress and you don't realize you're in it
Great.
sometimes. So it is trying to figure out how do you break through that. And so with clients, it is a lot of that, reflecting things back as you hear what's coming up for them so they can hear what's going on. Like they'll be like, oh, you're right. I'm like, no, you're right. You said it. I just said it back. Like it.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to recognize stress in our world?
That's a good question. I wonder. I think of our environments we're in, potentially, depending on where you live and everything, and your work environment, atmosphere, who you're around, might just be all of it's just at this high rate, and you don't realize that's the like water you're swimming in.
Right,
So
right.
I think that could be some of it. I think some of it's that we are potentially maybe in our minds so much and we're not touching into our bodies, and then you don't realize that tension. If you really felt what your body was feeling, you might notice it more.
Right.
So
It's
yeah.
interesting so there was probably at I don't know, maybe 6 months into when COVID had really taken over, and it was just everything was so different.
Mm,
I actually had, I had never done telehealth before, so everything was transitioned right, and then it was just insanity. So it's like longer days and not any self care, and my back seized up one day,
mm,
and I couldn't move, and it was probably one of the scariest things that I've ever experienced. And I remember I called the doctor, and they were like, well, we can see you at 3. I said, no, I can't move. Can we do a telehealth appointment? Like
yeah.
something. And I got on with the doctor, and they couldn't do anything. They were like, just do, there wasn't even drinking water. There was no questions.
Yeah.
And there was no discussion of my mental health or emotional health at all.
Mm,
And then I was able to maneuver and everything, and then going into chiropractor and having those discussions of what I'm doing. And I didn't even realize how much stress, like you said, with the massage,
mhm.
my whole back was like, for 10 hours a day, I'm holding this in as I'm doing my job of trying to be there for other people
Yeah.
in an upside down world.
Yes. That was like your body being like, we're done. Like
Yeah,
we're tapping
exactly. It was
out.
like,
We're tapping out.
we try to give you little signs, and
Hmm.
so anytime I have, it was very, for me, and this is why I was kind of asking some of your experience with people's resistances. It actually had to break through some arrogance that I had about what I thought my body could do. Like I thought there was a weakness or something that I would need to take a break, instead of knowing what I was doing was actually unwell.
Yeah, that's exact like those stories that are out there, or people call them beliefs or stories, or the thoughts that kind of get us stuck. So yeah, here your body was probably giving you, your being or some point might have been like, excuse me, like we need a break. But it's so quiet, and it's just like, quiet down, we're
Right.
tough, we're strong, we can't show weakness, or whatever that everyone needs me, like I need to be there for other people, like
Yes.
you wait, like whatever that is. We do have those other things competing, maybe, that
Right.
will block us from noticing that stress. And that is internal, but also, like I said, like in our society, there's these messages. Um, you know,
Right. And it's hard. One of the things that I'm always asked, whether it's coaching, teaching, or therapy, is, everyone's always talking about feelings. What do you want me to actually do with them? And I'm like, I don't know." It's like, what do you want to do with them? But it's such a good question, because we're not taught, like you're saying, most of us aren't taught, what do we do with your feelings? Well, we have to just acknowledge them. And like you're saying, I love how you're saying it, is like these little voices, they're like these little whispers, and we try to squash them out because they're inconvenient
Mhm.
to our busy, stressful life.
Yes, and I just see you there, like stuck with the doctor and being like, I don't know, like just like not being able to move, and like how like I don't know, just like unsupportive that was. And um I'm glad you had a chiropractor. So I was like, if they could have just been like, why don't we just take 3 deep breaths together?
Well,
Like,
I
let's
was
just
like,
take
what?
some
Like
breaths
it
together.
was spasming, so it was so bad.
Oh.
And when I think sometimes, like I was in a bit of panic, because I couldn't even,
Mhm.
it's scary, because your whole body is just
Yeah.
like, you're not moving. And I reached out to a friend of mine, and she said, if you're having spasms, you're dehydrated.
Mm.
And she gave me some tips, and I remember my mind, because I was so panicked, I was like, I can't get to the bathroom, so I don't want to drink it. You know what I mean? It's like this
Yeah.
whole chaos.
Yeah.
Um, and then once I drank water, the spasms started to go away, and I was
Um,
able to like maneuver and get the heating pad and all of this stuff, and to really learn my body is trying to help me. It's not
Mhm.
trying to hinder me. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard.
I know because we are constantly, I think, because I really like in my intro, it's like I really love imagery work, and some of it is through the somatic world of like, where was I going with this? Well, like with anatomy, like creative alignment.
Okay.
And so they were like, I forget who it said. It might be Eric Franklin in one of his books said something about we tend to only talk about our bodies when we're like, this hurts, that's not working. Yeah. We're never like, wow, my shoulders feel real great today. Like we're
That's
usually just
true.
complaining about our body. Yet here you said this beautiful thing that it was probably like, yeah, I'm trying to help you out. Like I'm trying to send you a message. And just like you said, the people are like, what do you want me to do with these emotions? It's like, again, it's information for you. It's not trying to hurt you or make you
Right.
feel painful, like things. It's actually trying to support you in some way.
Right. Right. And so you just mentioned something I wanted to jump into you about imagery.
Mm.
Does that, and I'm assuming that ties into the everything that you do with stress. Could you talk a little about that? Because one of the things too that when you and I connected is that I liked about your information was there are so many great skills what it sounds like you teach your clients, but there's so much judgment and stigma on a lot of the work of slowing down and imagery. I get a lot of the negative stuff of like, oh, you want me to just think happy thoughts and bluebirds, and I'm like, all right, here's someone who specializes in this, so let's have her come on and dispel some of this, because what I find even for myself is I can fall into the negativity spirals when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm stressed. And so when I'm trying to like reach out to supports, sometimes it's hard to receive optimism when you're in pain.
Mhm.
And so when people are like, well, positive thinking, it's like, I'm going to punch you in the face because
Yeah.
I mean, just
I
being
think
real here, just being
no,
real of like,
it's true. I always talk about how, because I'm in the wellness world and I always feel like I don't know. I have a pretty salty side too, and a little bit of eye roll towards some stuff. Because I remember reading something that was like, go from fatigued to empowered. I'm like, that sounds tiring. Like, I'm too tired to be empowered. Leave me alone.
right,
Like, so I totally feel that sometimes of being like, and even positive thinking and self-compassion were two things I had to also like, I wasn't against them by any means, but I definitely was like, does this work? And I was like, oh, it does work. Like once you start putting it into practice and looking at it in the bigger way, when you
right.
said that, when they're like, oh, why do you want me to think about positive things like bluebirds or whatever? I always like to remind clients that they just shared with me like wildly ridiculous worst case scenarios.
Like we're gonna hold hands and sing Kumbaya or something. I mean,
I was like,
that's like,
but I just say, like, you're okay. Like, you think it's totally fine and like okay to think these wild worst case scenarios, but you think being a little bit more positive to yourself is like like it's ridiculous. Like it's like that was ridiculous, like because that's not real either. But
right.
you're okay with the not real negative, but you're not okay with the not real positive.
That's
Like,
interesting. Yeah, that's
right?
a good
But
point. So how do you start? Because people, I think when you're presenting this and people must be coming to you, it's they know something's not working, but they don't know what it is. So how would you guide someone that? Like, how do you introduce what imagery is, and in your work with someone?
because we do imagery all day long. Like everyone's doing imagery all the time because like worrying is a really great example of imagery, or daydreaming. Um, I always think about the food I really like. Daydream about
Oh,
that, like,
Elaine, yes, you were among your people.
like treats.
Yes.
I'll do that with my partner. I'm like, wouldn't it be really nice if we have ice cream sundaes right now? That's imagery. So it's, you know what I mean? Like we're creating an image, and imagery isn't just visual. So it's a whole embodied thing. noticing how it is in your body, like the image. So people, because some people don't see images, like when they close their eyes and do an imagery session, they're like, same thing. That's okay, because imagery is visual, but it's also sounds. It's also scent. It's all the senses. It's tactile, it's somatic. You'll feel things in your body. You'll have thoughts that go along with it as well. I do think people who feel a little skeptical, I tend to lean into some of I feel like skeptical, then they're like, I need science. And there is so much research around imagery working, and in the athletic, like Olympic athletes, they use imagery. So I'll have clients who are like, oh, Elaine, I really want to, they have like big emotions and they don't want to, I'm just gonna make up something so random. Like we're trying to work with snapping at people when you're angry, right? Like, oh, when I get mad, I snap at people, but I'd rather pause or take a breath or take a walk first before I have that conversation. But when you're in it, they're like, how do you stop yourself? Because you're like at a 10, it's very hard. I'm always like, it is very hard. So I'm always like, you can practice it when you're calm in your mind. You can imagine the conversation you had that didn't go great, and you could rework it so that you start practicing in your mind what you will do, because it's almost just like really practicing. Because athletes, they've done a study on this. There's some study about people playing basketball. Don't quote me on it. I can find it and give it to you. But it's like, it's kind of like they grouped the people together, people who physically practiced shooting hoops, and I don't know sports very well. And then the other group just like imagined doing it. And it was like, they did just as well, like with their practice. Because if you visualizing your whole body, your body and your mind, it's like, your body doesn't know it's not happening. Just like when we watch a movie and it's scary, we feel scared, like our body, like we'll sweat, or like the hairs will raise on the back of your neck. Like we're feeling that. So it's like, it's very effective. So I guess that would be a good way.
That's really, well, I never ever thought of that you already are doing imagery when you're doing the night. Like I never connected that before. That's fascinating.
Like all our fans.
Well, you're already doing it.
Right? So it's like,
holy shit. I never, and I think our world, we talk so, about like distractions, right? Especially, of when you're at a job that you hate, or I get that a lot too, of when people are in situations like, holidays are a big stressor for people. And being able to help them prepare of like, how do I deal with my aunt or my mother or my drunk brother, like all of those things. And I never would have worded it that way of let's work through this and see how else we can imagine it.
Do you know what I like to tell people for that? Like where they have to have like dinners with people or see people, when someone is really, I don't know how to say it. Like, just like I always say wild, like their own wild self. And you're just like, that person's really difficult. I like to imagine myself in my own bubble. So like your imagery bubble, but I like to imagine other people in snow globes if they have like a strong what's the word? Not disorientating energy, but like they're ungrounded. And so like it's very
discombobulated.
Yeah. So you're just like, hey. So I sometimes just imagine them in a snow globe, like their own wild world. And that's them over there experiencing their thing. Because a lot of stuff people do to us, it feels personal. It's not, it's their stuff, right? Like it's their stuff. Like, oh, they were mean to me. I know, but it's them. It's not you. So I just try to imagine them in their snow globes. That's a way to use imagery as well. And it's kind of fun to imagine them in a snow globe.
Right. And do you have people, like, what are some of the struggles that you see people have, like in the work that you do? Is it that they don't believe it, or they think it's silly? Like what are some of the common problems that you face?
I think it's kind of like how to incorporate it maybe, and not necessarily, I don't know, no one has told me it's silly yet. Like,
I'm just thinking of some of the people I know in my life who are really critical, not saying that, but of just like, prove it to me. Like you said, like, where's the article? Like I've had those discussions. No,
I do have to have, that's a big thing of that. And like you said, imagery has an it's very well researched. They use it with people with cancer. Like there's a ton of research around healing power of that. There's so much work, and imagery, that's a very big category, but there's a lot of different types of imagery under that, with like guided imagery or interactive imagery. So what we were talking about, kind of just like visualizing, like replaying something, is kind of like a visualization. And I feel like that's more mental imagery. But then when I like to do guided imagery, which what I was trained under is more interactive. So it's much more like there's a calming, like a relaxation, like 10 minutes of relaxation. And then you're letting the client have their own image come up, and they're telling you what they're seeing and feeling and experiencing. I'm just guiding them through it, as in like, I'd say like, oh, Patrick, what temperature is it in your peaceful place? You know, what colors are you noticing, just to deepen the experience. And that I like, because it is, you said this earlier, it's building that slow down muscle and the receptive energy muscle, and that unfolding of like our intuition versus like, I got to figure this out with my mind. It's like, what if I quieted down and see what image showed up for me around this thing?
Right.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. I was in a training in Dublin once, and I was the only American. It was really fun because they were all like, like I was just like, I'm from, faster talker, like just who I am naturally. And my trainer was so sweet, and he said, I'm gonna get a sign for your office that just says slower. Awkward, but I was like, okay, well played. And that, even him saying that, it was such a gentle intervention. I never realized how intense or fast I was going in my work. And then taking the next step of saying, oh my gosh, I do this with myself all the time. Like I'm supposed to, just like with the back, power through, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Yikes.
Not very conducive to healing, is it?
No, I mean, I wish. Like we could,
right? I'm so committed. I'm committed to it.
But it doesn't. It's like once we like ease back, it happens, right? Like when we let things do its thing, it actually works better. But it is so hard when we've been trained in this other way for so long. I feel like in this kind of society of like, multitasking and pushing, and so it does probably feel very different. And it's not easy for me. It's a practice for me too. It's why I think I'm so drawn to it, because it challenges me. It challenges my own.
And that means it's the best work, right? Because then you're always growing.
Yeah, because it's hard to be like, oh, okay, let's just let this arrive. What?
Wait, where's my control? I need to control all aspects all the time.
But it's magical. Like imagery feels very magical, and people like just relax and they let it happen. And then it's like, oh, I have my own relax, like why I said peaceful place is a very common one, where you do kind of like let that peaceful place kind of arrive. And it's fun because some imagery is very directive. It's telling you your peaceful place is this beach that you're walking on and it's sunny out or whatever. But in my schooling of it, it's like, well, we don't know if people like beach.
Right.
We shouldn't assume like that they're going to be feeling comfortable and safe there. So that's the nice part about letting an image rise for them, because they don't even realize what's going to show up. Like you might say, oh, I definitely going to be at the cabin I love to go to in the forest. And then all of a sudden, surprise, you're in a library. You're like, oh, I've never been to this place before. Right. So that's the fun kind of, I think that's when people like it, because you get
it's funny as you're mentioning that, because I'm just connecting last year I tried something new, where I offered for the new year, it was a 21-day journaling for wellness challenge, where they would sign up and they get like an automatic email every day with a writing prompt that, it was 21 days, but they could take as much time as they wanted.
Yeah.
And I didn't connect that journaling was part of exactly what you're saying, because one of the questions I asked them, because especially around the new year, it's always like new year, new me, new body, blah, blah, blah. So one of the journaling prompts was, write about a time where you were angry with your body. that you felt your body failed you. And people got very emotional about like some of the responses of just like, this is the stupidest thing I'm so angry right now. Because of what was coming up, it was like I had a friend
Yeah.
of mine who was taking it, and it was just like, I go, yeah, just go with it, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And some of the other things too of what about a time where your body was there for you?
That's a beautiful question because it's
Yeah,
something we don't think of ever, I think,
right. Just like you're
right?
saying, like, well, oh, my shoulders, I could walk today. Like I did learn that from my back. Like, I'm very thankful when I can walk.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I never connected that that's a different way. I just finished a 6-week journaling group, and it's the same way of there's just kind of a little bit of structure,
Yeah.
but a whole lot of freedom of what they can write and how they interpret it.
I love that because journaling is something I don't have a consistent practice with, but when I do it, I'm like, this is amazing. And when you said like the prompts being sent, I'm like, I love that. That's so nice and interactive, and it takes the pressure off it. Because clients, I'll be like, oh, do you ever reflect? My goal is try to get people to just put in a little bit of time of reflection into their week, because I think it can go a long way. And they're like journaling, ugh. And I'm like, I think everyone thinks you have to have like a quill pen and you have to be like, dear diary, and
Yes.
there's a long entry, and I'm like,
Yes.
bullet points, friend, bullet points, a doodle, like just something. Or like when you said you had these prompts, I'm like, find prompts somehow. I'm like, oh, go to Patrick, he
Right.
emailed them to you. Like
Right.
that's genius.
You don't even have to talk to me. That was the best thing. I'm like, you don't even have to talk to me. But
So
some of them, they
that.
would respond and be like, oh, go with that.
No, that's awesome. So I think that's really great because it is something that it's really, if we're just in our brains all the time, it's so stressful. Like that's why we're not seeing that we're stressed, because we're just like circling around in
Right.
that world in our that we're making up.
And I also think too, like you were saying with your former work, the environments that you can work in too.
Mhm.
I remember when I was working for a clinic, and I loved the people I worked with. I loved the population. But the management, every time we'd have a meeting, is like, we're gonna close, you don't have that. And it was such a like
Scary.
I don't, yeah, scary and fear, and like you have to do more, you have to do more. And I didn't even realize how damaging that was to me as a person, but also as a practitioner
Mm.
of and I see that a lot when people are in certain work environments, at least in the mental health field,
Mhm.
the pressure to be a conveyor belt, and
Yeah.
it erodes the beauty of the work that they're trying to do.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
stress of I gotta get my numbers, I gotta get this, and it's hard. It's hard to
It
combat that.
it is. It's that it and like yeah, that tone set for the whole, like here you're like this healing place, filled with healers. And then
Right.
it's like, like emergency. It's like, oh,
It's
that's
like a
your
jack in the
job.
box when that damn thing is gonna come out. Like, oh, heal already, heal.
But it's just like, who's gonna like, why would you bring all that pressure in on these on you, like the management to bring all that pressure? And it's like, I'm sorry, you're stressed out, that's your realm. Like, but how do we like this healing work, it doesn't really fit in a business model well because of the conveyor belt of like
Right.
your caseload should be this is how many people you need to get to, this is how many minutes you should be with them, this is how long it should take you to get your notes done. And it's like, actually, like, we're all human beings in this, and there needs to be a little bit more space around it.
Right.
That's my
Right. That's why someone said to me once, I love the phrase, I'm unemployable because I could never have a boss again. And I'm like, well, I I think I'm pretty employable, but I would never want that pressure again. I'm like, no,
yeah.
this is not how it works anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's and it is like I really like, I don't know if you, oh no, I'm gonna forget the person's name. It's 4 Ways to Click, where it's about the relational therapy, where they say that 5 people you spend the most time with influence your stress response, like your stress levels.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yes. So it's always curious. One, I like to think about what are the 5 people you're around the most, getting influenced by, but then I'm like, ooh, what are you doing? Like, who are you influencing?
Oh my God, yes.
Right? Like,
Shit.
like, are you walking around the office
Am I that
knocking things
person?
over and yelling? Like, or are you being friendly? So, but it is really interesting how much, we're humans, we're very connected, and we really influence each other.
Right. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to think about that. That's a powerful question by people around us. So when someone comes to work with you, Elaine, what does that process look like? Are there different options? Is it online, in person? Is a combination of things?
It's all online right now.
Okay.
So that's why I always forget to tell people I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area.
But it's so convenient, right? It's like,
yeah,
you could be in Timbuktu and I can still work with you.
exactly. But I am thinking I'm like, this year, it's December. This season, I run seasonally because, like, when you said the new year, new me, it's like a big eye roll because I do a winter group. It's an online group. And I'm very much like, no, like, winter is not about, oh, let's get on a diet. Let's do a 6 a.m. boot camp. Like, that's not, like, we're hibernating. We're hibernating. When spring hits, that's when we got our energy. That's when we shift to salads because it's warmer out. That's
Right.
when, like, we move a lot more in different ways. So I try to ignore the whole like January thing. I like, let's let that go. It doesn't work. It's the middle.
Right. Yeah,
It's the
every
middle.
year.
Yeah, it's cold. It's dark.
I know. Like we're saying, it's like dark at 4:30. It's like, okay. The other day it was 6:30. Felt like midnight. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am ready for bed. No, I'm not gonna work out. I'm trying not to like fall asleep at dinner.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like tuning in a little bit more around that. So now I lost my train of thought, what we were talking about.
Sorry. Ooh, squirrel.
Oh, how to work with me. Oh, yeah. So I have my
your winter group.
Yeah. So my winter group's online. That's through the whole winter. It's like once a week. We meet for an hour and we do chill stuff. Like, I keep it very chill. It's a chill group. It's not even, you don't even have to share if you don't want to. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. We're going to do mindfulness. We do yoga nidra. We do imagery work. Just very calming, like just winding it down kind of work. That's the goal of that. And I mean, people are welcome to share and they do share, but I try to say, like I said recently, I was like, it's a community that's safe for introverts. Like, don't feel like you have to show up and like work real hard through something. Like, we're trying to tap in more to that settling down and seeing what arises and how to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves. So,
and I think it's interesting, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been having a lot of discussions with people that, yes, calming down in tranquility is important, but we also need a space where you can be agitated and upset and angry, but we don't want it one extreme or the other. It has to be a balance, like ebb and flow.
Yeah, like where you are is where you are, right? Like kind of meeting yourself where you're at. So it's like not forced. Well, my thing is we have to practice on how to relax because so many of us are like, I can't relax. It's like, yeah, let's practice. And it's a practice. So don't worry if it's like not working right away, like it's like it'll take time. So it's just building that muscle up of like how to get to a relaxed place, how to soothe yourself. Because when you are agitated and stuff, but first you have to say, I'm agitated.
Right.
I need blank. Like,
yes.
That's okay. Then that's the thing with clients. I don't know if you see that too. Like when they're doing quote well, they're like, I'm doing so well. And then they come back next week and they're, oh, I got mad. I'm like, you're a human. You're supposed to get mad at things. Like you're supposed to have things. You're not.
Well, I remember years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about stuff like this of like wellness and health, and she said, I don't understand. She goes, I received this invitation for this women's retreat, and it's all about yoga and painting and all that. She goes, I'm angry. I want to break shit. Like, where is that group? And I said, exactly. Like, I want to, because it's like she has so much going on, this stress, and hers was just much more explosive when it got too much.
Yeah, because you think like our stress response is fight, flight, freeze, and then we have like tend and befriend. We have other ones too, but I think of that fight energy. It's like, you got to get it out. You can't like try to trap it. I'm
Right.
not saying punch somebody. Like if you need a kickboxing class or, like something, sometimes you need something like that to kind of get it out.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because there was one day where I was thinking, I planned all week. This was pre-COVID. Seems like a lifetime ago, where I said, I'm going to be a good person. A good practitioner. I'm going to go to yoga on a Friday afternoon. That's what good, healthy people do. And so I was like, I'm going to do hot yoga, because then it's like a workout. And so I went. It was a 5:30 class. And as I was doing it, I was getting really angry.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes yoga teasers are like, that's great, it's moving, go one with the spirit. And I'm like, no, really, I'm just fantasizing of walking, storming out. It was in a dramatic place.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I realized I have to hold back all week. Because, when you're at work, you have this and your meetings and appointments and this, and you have to be the professional. And the I don't want to say wild energy, but like the other part of me that needed to like sing or yell or go for a run or do Zumba or something still wasn't getting fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I realized that, the anger like melted away, and I was able to then enjoy the yoga. But then I said, I will never do yoga again on a Friday at 5:30.
Oh, you're like, that's your kickboxing class.
Yes.
The big movement, big energy.
Yes.
I had like a temper tantrum in a yoga class years ago. Because I really like yin yoga, because that was like, right? Like, talk about, I did yin yoga on a whim because I was like, that sounds relaxing. And I was like, no, it's not, because they're making you stop and be in one spot. Yikes.
For like 5 minutes, right? It's like 3 to 5 minutes for each
pose.
pose.
In that one place. And we're not like that. We're we have like 17 tabs open on our phones, on our computers and stuff. And here it's like, you're going to be in this pose for 3 to 5 minutes. And I was like, this isn't relaxing, but it was magical because it was so eye-opening. But so one of the classes, I thought the teacher ended up not being there, and I left the teacher, and it was a different teacher. I felt like she wasn't doing it right. Like, I had so much judgment going on, and I was like doing like some sort of, and I'm not a yogi, so doing some sort of warrior pose, and I just had like a tear streaming down my face. I'm like, am I fucking crying in a yoga class right now? Like, I was having so much, and I realized that's when I realized my inner critic was like possessing me, and I was like, oh my God, because I don't hear like a bitchy voice, like some people have those thoughts, like they're like real mean thoughts. No, it's in my body, like it's tension. That's my inner critic. And that's where it surfaced when you said that, like in the yoga class, like, oh, it can surface. And that's the first time I had that in a yoga class, because I'm not a constant practitioner, so I hadn't hit that. And it was intense. But
that's really interesting. I've actually never heard the version of an inner critic not being verbal. That's really fascinating. I've never explored that before, because normally it's like the negative thoughts, the critical, nasty voice. I've never paid attention to it being in my body. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that. It starts
in my body, I realize, and then I can figure out my thought. That's my processing. Like, it's like, why do I have all this like this stuff going on? And then if I calm down, like, and then I breathe and I get into my body, I'm like, oh, okay, like I've been judging myself quietly in the background of my mind very well, I think efficiently chattering. That's when I'll feel it. But yeah, that was like, it's true that energy that can be like, I don't know, summoned up in a yoga class is amazing.
So what are some techniques that you give people who might be, who really struggle with the quieting down? Like, how do you address that? Like, my mind is always going, or, if people, I think we're seeing more ADD, ADHD, especially in adults. I think with a lot of the, constant notifications on our phone and everything, how would you address that with someone?
Yeah, because there's a lot of people are like, oh, Elaine, meditation doesn't work for me. My mind has lots of thoughts. Like, we all have lots of thoughts. We have 60,000 thoughts a day or something. So that's everybody. So it's a muscle you build. So I'm always like, any type of mindfulness practice you do is never going to be like like a rain soundtrack in your mind all of a sudden. Like that's not realistic. I think we have an unrealistic expectation of what meditation is or mindfulness is. Like we think our mind's going to be so quiet, like a little white noise machine's going to click on and it's going to feel real good. And it's like,
Right.
no,
Right.
all of this is a terrible exercise in trying to get your mind under control. I think about I was doing a positive coaching program recently, and we had to do like these, they call them reps, like these mindfulness reps. And I was like, oh, it's like walking my dog. Like your mind is like a wild little creature on a leash that is like barking at the bus and then barking at the dog across the street and then wanting to go back over here and then wanting to smell over there. And like mindfulness is just trying to like pull that leash and get the dog like back, like we're going this way.
Right.
So it's actually a lot of work. So I think we have to separate mindfulness from relaxation, probably, because it is like a kind of an active exercise to just bring it back, labeling it thought. And then I like to try to do things that are, some people just are more, motiony. So I'm like, do it while you're walking. Like just, you don't have to try to like force yourself to sit still. But if you do a mindful walk where you're really looking at like the colors of the leaves or hearing the crunchy sounds, like just listening to like, what sounds am I hearing right now? Where am I right now? Constantly bringing yourself to the present. I think that can help, strengthen that muscle.
I've actually found that this might sound strange, is over the last couple of years, washing dishes has become that for me. Which before it would just be like something to do, but it actually, if I'm agitated, I can, it's weird. It is like that mindfulness of just like, okay, what's going on with me, and or where am I at, or what's going. It's been very interesting.
No, and that is great because it's like you got the water, you got the soap, you have the dishes, you have all these tactile things too that can keep you present, I think.
Right. And the scrubber.
Yeah, exactly.
I need my scrubber. No, that's
lots of fun sounds.
Right. But because I fall into that, sometimes I do like, I love the quiet meditation or mindfulness or prayer time. And for a long time, I thought something was wrong with me because when I was doing those practices, my mind would go to the things that need to be done. And then I had a teacher of mine who said, well, that's what needs to be done. So go with it. And I was like, oh, so then I would be like meditating, right? And it'd be like, this is what you need to do. Like, and I would just I would grab my phone and I just have a notepad and I'd be like, you need detergent. And then it was something I took like the anxious energy and I just made it something tangible.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I was able to go back more into the meditation. And then I noticed my body was, hey, I just took care of that. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. See, and that I think there's a teacher at like an imagery conference, and she said, oh, we think of imagery as so precious, and like we whisper, we don't want to like ruin someone's imagery. And that's the same thing we probably think about meditation. It's like it's so precious, but it's not. It's like, okay, I got a to-do list. Let me add something, and then I can go back. Like it's okay. You didn't mess up. It's not like it has to be a perfect 15 minutes of pure quietness or something, or resisting a thought. If it's really like, hello.
Yeah. Usually it's something we need. That's exactly where I need to go. It's like, oh, there's that resentment. Scrubba.
And then it's also just like this idea too of, because people are like, I can't sleep at night. Like, what's going on? And they're always thinking about, our minds are going to say like, don't forget that email. Don't forget this thing. So it's like, get a to-do list. That's part of journaling to me too. It's like, well, maybe you just need to like reflect on, what do I need to get done this week? Like get it out of your mind so then it's not circling around again.
Right. Lists have been very helpful for me. It just, with work and businesses, it's like, I don't want to hold on to this. And I'll go back to I used to be one of those people who'd go to the grocery store and leave without the 3 things that I went to the grocery store for. And I'm like, Patrick, you need a list. It's okay. Like, It's
You can still
okay.
free form off the list, like get the things you
Yes.
need and then free form like creative
Ooh, something
choices on the
shiny. I need
after.
it. But I remember this one time I went and I got everything on my list. I was like, success, success, I win.
Feels so good.
Okay, Patrick. But it just is those small things I find that helps the insanity of the world just go a little bit smoother.
Yeah, but why isn't that considered a success? I feel like so many people have such high expectations about what success is. And it's like, yeah, I completed something. I got food that I needed into my home. We just have so much pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we only think of little things. And that's the thing too, like when people are very career orientated, which is like everybody in the United States, I think, too much focus on the career. It's like we have all these other elements of our life. Like, what is success? Like, is it really that hitting that deadline at work, or is it having a really meaningful conversation with a friend? Like, that's successful. That's pretty cool. So.
And it's interesting too when you pull in, and we can get into this in another discussion of when you look at like different cultures too. When I went to Italy once, I remember one of the things that struck me is I wasn't really seeing the people walk around with coffee cups. And I was like, when you go into a cafe, like they'll have the espresso, but they will sit there and have that engagement. And it was just so beautiful to me of, oh my God, they really are enjoying life more. Like they were busy, but there was this gentleness.
That's really beautiful, because I never thought about that when you said that. I'm like, oh my God, all we do is go to, we're asked right away for here to go. And there it's like, you're like, nope, everyone's for here. We're gonna drink our coffee here.
Isn't that, and it always, and I'm, with drive-through and stuff, it's so convenient, but it was really one of those beautiful things. And then their meals were just longer and thoughtful, and it wasn't rushed, and it was such a beautiful experience of interacting with each other, and then with the locals and different things on the tour. And then when you come back here, one of the things that I struggle with is my days are usually really long. So then this is a habit I've had since I was a kid. I'll eat in the kitchen standing up.
Oh.
Right? Like, shove it in. And so it's like everybody I know is like, are you gonna sit down? Like, sit down. Like, sit down. It's like, you're making me anxious. I don't want to sit down. But
yeah.
But when you do, I never realized, wait, I'm eating too fast. I'm overeating. I'm not resting, and I'm not enjoying this at all. So that's kind of like how I'm learning more of where my areas of work need to be.
Yeah, and it's true, because it's like and I think that's somewhat cultural too, because it's like, I don't know how long I worked in offices, and it was like, you're like eating and emailing at the same time.
Right.
Like, how are you digesting anything? You could be eating like an immaculately, quote, healthy meal. But if you're in that much stress, just kind of like focused on all these other things, you're not probably getting half the nutrients you need to digest it and absorb it. Then when you sit quietly, like you said, it's hard to do that. Sometimes we think, oh, but it will only need like probably 15, 20 minutes, but it isn't really that long. You don't have to take a 2-hour lunch, but
although those are nice as well. Like,
especially the nap in there, that's good. But yeah, so that I think we get worried or something. It's gonna take up too much time or something like that.
We're gonna lose out.
Yeah,
Something
but it's
bad will
another
happen.
Mindfulness moment. I always say that it's like their whole meal doesn't have to be mindful. I was like, if you can have 3 bites where you actually know what you're eating,
Right.
and enjoy it.
But what did you have for dinner? I don't know. I think I chewed. I almost choked. Like
we had to when I was in school, we had it went from in-person to online, but we would have like these in-person intensives, and we all eat together, like we were like living together for that week basically, and we had nutrition, and our teacher was like, our professor was like, you're supposed to chew at least 30 times. So at that lunch we were so quiet eating our food, like
that would have killed me. I would have died.
Like
I would have died.
So you just like chew your food at least 30 bites. Totally.
I've heard that. It's hard. It's a good one.
It takes a lot of pressure off your stomach to die. You know what I mean? Because you're getting it to liquid.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I digest.
So, so how can people get a hold of you or connect with
Okay.
you? Because I mean, we
Oh
didn't
yeah.
even get to like a fraction of what I wanted to.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean,
Let's.
like you'll have to come back. But how can they
Yes.
find you?
You can find me on Instagram as wellness as art, and there's like some underscores there. And then you can find me at my website, wellnessasart.com. Get on my newsletter. It's super chill. It's kind of monthly, as in I try for monthly. Sometimes it doesn't happen because I'm not going to send you filler. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I send things that are meaningful. And then sometimes it's more than monthly if I have programs coming out.
Okay.
I like to keep people in the loop. I've been trying to do Instagram lives weekly, but so just
We should do one. Let's do one together because I'm supposed to
yes,
be doing them and I never do them.
yeah. And I
Okay.
just chat to myself and no one joins, but I like to do a little breathing or a mudra or like a little stress relief tool I like to share. And then where else can you find me? I guess my email is just Elaine at wellnessasart.com. I do a Facebook Live almost quarterly with the San Francisco Theosophical Society, where I do a little imagery session. So
Ooh,
you
fun.
can find them on YouTube.
Okay.
As well. And they're like 20 minutes. They're super casual. They're short, little. If you want to see a sample of like a guided imagery session of like some peaceful places, there's that. And then, yeah, just reach out and then we can either work out a individual kind of, well, one, you can just have a free chat with me to see like what's what. Like if you're like, I want coaching or I want imagery, I want both, or I want five, I don't know, like we'll work it out. And then
That's
I'm
awesome.
going to try to have more there might be some more in-person stuff coming up. So if you're in the SF Bay area, watch out for that because I want to kind of bring in my yoga nidra practice to some in-person kind of places.
Ooh, nice.
But I like to do it online too, because in your home, cuddled up with, because yoga nidra, if no one knows, is like you're laying down, it's guided meditation, and you're just covered in blankets and pillows.
Right.
It's really nice. So sometimes it's fun to do it at home.
So what is one piece of advice or one thing as we wind down tonight that you would like the audience to walk away with? If you could give them one piece of advice.
Breathe. You know, just take a breath. Like you get that little bit of a longer exhale and all of a sudden your whole body is like, oh, it's okay, you know? And I want everyone to know it is okay. Like you're okay.
Oh, I love that.
You know what I mean? Like, let's just breathe.
Just breathe. Well, Elaine, thank you so much for coming. This has been awesome. I hope you can come back because I feel like we have so much more to talk about.
I
So
know,
please.
I just want to know more about you. You're so fun. And I love your podcast. And I do have to tell you, Sunday, I started my self-care because I was being really bad about my own self-care. And I did a face mask and I listened to Friday Night Feels. And it was so fun. I'm like, that's my new Sunday ritual.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Support self-care so much. And it's really nice. And you do have such a fun group of people on. And so thank you for your work and putting this
thank you.
there.
That means a lot to me. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone who listens and supports. And remember that we are on all the podcast and YouTube channels, platforms, all of that jazz. And I hope you all have a beautiful weekend. And I will see you in 2 weeks on Friday Night Feels. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.